Hello, this is Jeff Byers. Welcome back, and this is Module 3. And we are going to show you how to turn all your stuff in. You're supposed to have high poly and low poly completed. There's some things we need to do to prep you for getting some screenshots. So we need to have screenshots, and we need to have some renders. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in here to File, and we're going to go ahead and open Scene. So we're going to go ahead and open your scene with your, it doesn't matter, we'll do the high poly first. Bring that in, open that up, don't save, continue. Okay, there's our high poly model. It's really not high poly yet, it is just, it's got fencing on it. That means all the edge loops are supporting. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn on grid snap. If you don't have it on, just turn it on and then hit the W key and move it over a couple snaps. Just kind of snap it over, maybe two. That looks good. And then we're going to go to File, Import. Okay. Now if you want to import another object into the scene that you've established right now, then you would want to go to Import. If you click on Open Scene, it'll open another scene and this one will disappear. Okay. So you don't want this to disappear. We want to import the low poly. So click on Import, click on the low poly, and import. Okay, and then we got our low poly. Let's move that over a couple. There we go. So now we've got them spaced apart. And so you're going to fulfill the first one, which means I need an MB file, FBX, and OBJ. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make sure this is high poly. So this is the low poly one, and this is fine. We're at about 3,882, just shy of 4K. And then this one here is around 13,000. So it's not even near what it needs to be because it still has harsh edges. Okay, they're just edge looped and fenced in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and go to Mesh, and we're going to go to Smooth, and we're going to smooth this by 2. Let that smooth. And so now this model is kind of ready to go into Mudbox. We probably should have created better edge loops through here, more dense edge loops through here. The handle looked great. This part you can probably add bolt heads to and all that stuff. So I can go in here and add more stuff to it, but I'd have to go in and change that. So what do I mean by that? Let me go back and just show you. So if you look at these edge loops, they're not spaced equally, right? They're not spaced equally across. So this piece would be hard to smooth in Mudbox and get a really nice structure. You really need a nice structure like the handle. See how they're evenly spaced? That's really important when you bring it into a sculpting program. If they are not evenly spaced like this front piece, I really need to evenly space edge loops across to really get the full benefit of sculpting in a package like ZBrush and Mudbox. But with that said, I'm not going to do that right now. Again, you know how to do that, and if I wanted to bring this in and add bolts, which I probably will, I will go ahead and space those edge loops a little better. Alright, with that said, let's go ahead and go back to our smoothing. Okay, and we're just going to show off our model right now. And so what I want you to do is we're going to go ahead and add wireframe on shaded with this, and just kind of get them, centered. And then I want you to go ahead and do a file save. So we're going to go ahead and go to File, Save Scene As, and the first one's going to be an MB file. So go ahead and name it your first name, last name, high underscore low underscore poly underscore weapon. So I did Jeff underscore Byers underscore high underscore low underscore poly underscore weapon. And as long as your first name's on there, I don't really care what you call it. I would highly recommend that you say high and low in there. But you can name it what you like after the fact, after this. But what I'm going to have you guys do is just select the whole thing, because we're going to do this 2 more times here. So do a Control C, so you don't have to write it out every time. And then with this one, we're just going to save it out. Now you do have a choice between my binary and my ASCII. I'm not asking for my ASCII, I'm asking for my binary, so make sure it's MB. Save it. And yes, I've already saved it, so I'll go ahead and save it again. And that's your MB file. Pretty easy. Okay, so now there are two ways of doing this. You can click on both of these objects. If you have a bunch of junk in your scene, I don't want all the other junk in your scene, I just want these two things. So select those two objects there, go to File, and Export Selection. And now you can go into different file formats when you export selection. So I'm going to do FBX export. It's going to be the first one. Export selection. And then let's go ahead and just Control and V, and you can see that's what we got. Make sure that smoothing groups is on and smooth mesh is on, and we're good there. And then, you know, of course, FBX file format should be 2020. And go ahead and export selection. Okay, there we go. I already did this once, so do it again. And then we'll have those selected again. Still, go to File, Export Selection, and this time I'm going to do an OBJ. It's pretty easy to change this, and an OBJ is even the most simplest form. And then Export Selection. Okay, there we go. And then I'm just going to go Control V. Do I have to spell it out again? Type it out again, I should say. And then Export Selection. Perfect, great. Alright, so now let's go ahead and put them back in the center, and that's really important. Okay, and so since I'm in a new scene with new objects, I can go in here and create a layer, and this will be my high poly. Okay, and this is kind of nice because we don't have to use that ugly scene we had before with stuff all over the place. And then I'm going to turn that off, and this will be my low poly, and this is going to be a lot cleaner scene for us to start with for our texturing. There we go. Low poly. Yay. Alright, so save that. Okay, so in here I would want you to go ahead and file save scene as, right? You want to save your scene out. Alright, so okie dokie. Alright, so we need a screenshot of your low poly. So let's go ahead and just for fun, we'll go into your render settings up here. Looks like a clapboard with a gear on it. And I'm going to have you make sure you have Arnold Renderer on. Okay, again, you can go into the Windows Settings, Preferences, and Plugin Manager to find that. You just click on that and just go loaded, auto load, and you won't see Redshift unless you download it. It's pretty cool software. Uses the GPU to render. It's a different render engine. Just auto load and load everything, and you should be good to go. Refresh, and then you can click on that. And then under Comments tab, we're just going to go into full HD 1080, right? And that's the only really anything that I need you to change. That's all I need you to change. Okay, and then in here we're going to click on mask, render mask. That kind of takes you through what your render is going to look like. And I want you to turn off your grid. Okay, so go to Show and click off grid. Just don't forget you did that, because if you want grid again sometime. So give me kind of a nice view of your wireframe, right? Wireframe, just kind of center it. And if you're not sure about centering, you can use the field chart to help you center the object. There we go. I want to see a little bit of the top and the bottom. I've already got the concept art, so you do not have to send that. Okay. Alright, just kind of get that centered. And what I'm looking at is the 6 here and the 6 here, and then up here and then down here, and just kind of get that. And when you get it just the way you like it, turn off the field chart. And I want you to go, if you're in Windows, just right click over here, whoops, just click on and hit S, and you can do the snipping tool. And I just go in here, move that out of the way a little bit, and go to rectangular snip, and just kind of snip a little piece like this. There we go. Okay, and then save that as a JPEG and save it to your desktop. And put your first initial, last name, And you can do weapon, and I probably should put low poly. Weapon front, right, and let's just highlight that and Control C, and then go ahead and save that on your desktop. Okay, there we go, and then you're done with that. And then let's rotate the back like that, so I can see the back like that. That looks good. And just get the, get it centered pretty good. I'm going to rotate a little bit on the back so I can kind of see all that information there. Here we go. When you give me a perspective, that means I can see the top, one of the, the top, and then one of the sides, and then the back. Okay, so that's a perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the S key. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and snip that. And save that. I'm going to go ahead and Control V. I guess this I didn't do it right. Fires. Let's see if I can find it in here. There it is. So I just call that back. Alright, there we go. Okay, cool. And then all we have to do is just rotate that around again, and we'll turn that off and turn the high poly on. Okay, and get a nice look at that. Perspective front. Use the snipping tool, S, and go through the whole thing. And we'll call that high poly. Make sure that's going to the desktop again. Click on save. There we go. And then in the back, there we go. Alright, so there are our screenshots. We need 4 of those. So now what we do? We now have 3 files. We did the MB, we did the FBX, and we did the OBJ. And now we got all 4 screenshots done. Wow, you're almost there. So now a rendering. Ooh, let's do that. That sounds like fun. And so what I'm going to have you guys do is a couple things. I added some materials on here so we can get a decent. I want a flat image first before you give me something fun. So flat image first. So flat image, okay. So that's basically kind of like clay, nothing that's really shiny and metally looking. So I know that's made out of metal, so don't worry about that, but it just helps me understand what your geometry looks like, and we'll capture the shadows better. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a flat, basically just click, select the object, right click over it and go down to assign new material. And in here you're going to do a shader, Arnold shader. We're going to do AI standard surface, okay? And it's going to put a basic surface on the whole entire thing. Okay. So I'm going to go all the way to the end here. I clicked on that arrow up here, and I see AI standard surface 5. I'm just going to call this high poly weapon. Okay. Always use underscores. Do not do a space without an underscore. And I'm just going to put texture on there. There we go. And so we're going to render, I don't want the low poly rendered, I want the high poly rendered. And let's get that centered pretty good so we can see it. So we need a front perspective and a back perspective of this. And then you guys can give me a render or something more fun if you want to. It doesn't matter to me. This is what I need to see how your geometry looks. Okay. So the weight needs to be up, and we need to go with kind of a basic gray, right? Okay. Everything else, roughness needs to be flat, and IOR needs to be at 1. That's going to be air. Okay. I do not want to see any reflection on here. Okay. So roughness can go all the way up. Okay, if we want to. And then the next thing we need to do is go in and make sure that we have a light source. So we need to go into, where are you, Arnold, and then select this guy right here, your sky dome. Create sky dome light. There we go. And then it's ready to go right away, right out of the box, right out of the gates, ready to go. I mean, it'll render something right now. So I'm going to hit 1. Doesn't mean it's going to be good yet. I'm going to do samples at 2. So basically, when I create a sky dome light, we have these attributes that we need to kind of finesse. So intensity, or excuse me, exposure needs to match intensity. Okay, so if you decide to go lower on this, we can, but we need to both go lower. So if I go 0.8 on that and 0.8 on that, then they need to match. Everything else I think is good. We could do, let's do a black background. So a black background would just be 0, right? Okay. And we'll adjust that as we go along, see if that works for us. So I'm going to go ahead and click on render and see what we get. I'm going to pause the video. I have no idea how long it'll. Okay, rendered at 12 seconds, which is not very long at all, and it looks pretty good. I don't like that part right there, but I'm just, for example reasons, if there's something wrong, I would go back and move that piece out. It's pushed in a little bit too close. And sometimes you don't notice these things until you actually render something. So we're getting a really nice, what looks like an ambient occlusion. This basically shows our model off. We have entirely too much light, or we're going to have to turn the material down, the darkness. Okay, so let's just kind of play with it a little bit. So I'm going to close that. And so the material's pretty dark as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and turn down the intensity. I think that's the issue. So let's go to 0.5. There we go. And exposure to 0.5. Just about half of what we have. And then we're going to go in here, and you see it renders pretty fast because our settings are really low. So under Arnold Renderer, I'm going to type this into 4. Let's just do 4. And diffuse is going to be 3. So those two, we don't really have any specular highlights or anything, so these two is really going to help. Okay, so let's go ahead and render this again. Let's take a look at it. Again, it renders pretty quickly, and we're getting a better result as far as the material, what the material should be looking like. Okay, we're still getting the dark areas to show all our detail. Okay, which is good. Alright, great. That looks much better. Okay, now to really show off the detail of this object, we're going to add a 3-point light system. And actually, it's not too bad with the ambient light, so we could probably get away with just one light. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. Let's go ahead and close this, right? And we're going to add a light. So let's go to Create, Lights, Directional Light. I like my directional lights. And since since the camera is this way, I'm going to go ahead and keep the light facing something like this. And excuse me, let's go in here, and our intensity is at 1, and let's keep it like that. And then under Arnold, use color temperature, and let's do something like 5800. Okay, hit enter. Exposure, that needs to match, so we're going to do 0.8 on there, So, oh, 1. Let's just do 1. And angle, we're going to keep that at 0. We're going to want really tight shadows. Samples at 2, and that's about all we need to do right now, like that, for that. So I'm going to do a quick render. Now it's gonna when you add another light, it's gonna slow the render down just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and click on render. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so now you see that looks way better. Now we get some really harsh, we get some long shadows in here. So the idea now is to kind of point the light at the corner here, okay? But we're getting some beautiful separation with the objects, and it's really showing your model off, which is what we want to do. So we're almost there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this button right here. Just kind of saves that particular image into RAM. And so I'm just going to move the renderer over here to the other side. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this towards the corner, like rotate it a little bit, so it's kind of facing the corner, so it'll kind of soften those shadows up and through here. So now we've got, and if you want to get it exactly the way I have it, here are the numbers. So rotate X is negative 33.163. Just do negative 33. Rotate Y is 15. Rotate Z is negative 23. You get those, and it'll be pretty close to what I have. So in here, with just that change, okay, I don't mind if the model looks kind of white. That's fine. Let's go ahead and render it now. So you get the render view still on. Let's go ahead and render that. It shouldn't take too long, but I'm going to pause it anyway. Okay, so it's rendered out one more time. I kind of like that a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and pop that in. Click on this guy right here. And now I can use my slider to go between the two, so you can see what it looked like before and what it looks like now. That is a little more dramatic the way I had it before. Almost looks better, right? So why did I change it? Well, it helps me see your model a little bit better. Shadows are kind of fun though. You know, that direction of light does seem to highlight. You just kind of have to mess around to get the best render. So I might go back to the way I had it before. Okay, which is pretty easy to get. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to take this and face it that way again, like that, so we get those dramatic shadows that we saw before. Okay. Again, I'm going to pause this while I render because it takes a little bit longer than usual. Okay, so I got my dramatic shadows back, and it did take a little bit longer, 34 seconds to render. Alright, so we got some nice shadows now. I like that. It looks good. I liked it way better than the one we did before. This is what we have. That's a little flatter, right? And then this one adds dramatic effect to it. Okay. Cool. You can see the difference between all of them. There we go. So this really adds a lot. Adding a light to your scene and not just use the sky dome it helps with dramatic effect. So I would definitely, let's go ahead and save this out. So I'll show you how to do that. Before I do that, let's go ahead and show you what direction my light is, so you guys can get the same effect. Okay, so rotate X is negative 70, rotate Y is 13, rotate Z is negative 21. Okay, all right. So I'm going to save this scene for rendering. Okay, I'm just going to type in rendering on the end of this. There we go. Rendering, yay. Save as. Okay, so high poly, and now we need to rotate it. So make sure you save your render. So go to File, Save Image, and go into the option box. That's super important. Raw image, you'll save it and then you'll open it up and it'll be really dark. So click on Color Managed Image. Click Apply and Close, and then go to File, Save Image. And then you can save your image. I'm just going to save it to the desktop. You can see that I'm doing here. And you can see that I can go ahead and put, and it's going to be a PNG. I do want a JPEG. Let's do a JPEG here. There we go. And let's do your first initial, last name, high poly, render, weapon, and I'm just going to call this front. There we go. Cool. Right? And there's the front one, and let's go ahead and minimize that, and let's go ahead and click on the object, and we want to turn the object around like this. Okay, and just move it where you need to, like that. Just make sure you're within the lines here of the render, and let's go ahead and do that one, and I'll pause it. Okay, great. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this file, save image, and we're going to go to our desktop, and I think I've got one in here, weapon render front, and then click on weapon render back. There we go. Perfect. That's going to be a JPEG. Save that. There you go. And just for fun now, you can go in here and separate all the pieces, just for fun, because you're going to need to do that anyway. So if you ever do a reflection object or reflective object, all you have to do is turn on the IOR and turn down. So if you go in here and I select the whole thing, and I go Control A, and I go up to the high poly, right? And I can go into a preset. So I found my shader, material shader, and I can click on something like brushed metal or car paint or ceramic or chrome. Chrome does not work like you expect because there's nothing to reflect. You'd have to get an HDR image, right? You guys all know that it just won't reflect anything. We have clay. So if I did clay replace or water, but we want to do something a little more interesting. So what if I did brush metal replace, right? So let's render that out, and this will take a little bit longer to just see what it does, just for fun. Okay, again, it doesn't look like we expect because it's reflecting the surroundings, and there's nothing in here to reflect. So it's going to give you kind of a below average image. Okay, so if you do put something in there, you'd want to put in an HDR image, right? So do we have one that we can put in here? Sure we do. Let me pause a minute and let me get mine all set up. Okay, so I found the 4K Autoshop one that I think I gave everybody. That's in your crate. Remember, we used that to help with reflect your crate. So we need that too as well. So in your sky dome, just make sure you select your sky dome and go into color. Okay, go into file, and then go into, make sure you turn that off, and go ahead and click on your Autoshop. There we go. Add that to it. Now it's got something to reflect, so that's interesting. The lighting might be a little bit too low because when we select that, we got the intensity way down to 0.5. That's okay. Let's go ahead and click on render, and let's go ahead and pause that. This will take even longer now. Okay, this looks pretty good if it was just like a little piece, right? Brushed metal you would use. Again, just like chrome, you don't want to make everything chrome, but what the heck, let's try chrome. So now I'm going to go into presets, and let's just go click on the object and go to, whoa, what happened here? Presets are gone. Let's go back all the way to high poly texture, presets, and then chrome, replace. And then let's render it out one more time, and I'll pause it. Shiny chrome. Now you can see why I wouldn't want you to turn this in, because it's just it's I think some of you probably go, oh my god, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Some people just love chrome and the way chrome looks. Chrome is wonderful in small amounts, right? It's like having chrome bumpers against, you need to have contrast, right? So even though we all love this, and it's cool looking, but it's not practical. So that's why we're going to texture it, UV map it in the next module. But we're just having some fun here. Please feel free to play around with some of the other presets. I think they're pretty cool and they're pretty fun. Like car paint metallic. Click on replace and just see what that looks like real quick. So this is the render for the car paint. It took a long time to render. Where are we at here? 1 minute 34 seconds just for a regular render. Yeah, we are high res, but so send me a fun render too as well on top of everything if you want to. You don't have to. It's not. You're not going to be graded for this, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to see what you guys come up with a material. Just a material. Don't spend too much time on this. Again, make sure it looks good. Like, I would never turn this in because that is not right. I need to pull that away from the object a little bit right there. So that's it. So I'm gonna save this out. I like the car paint one, and do your thing. Rename it. Here's the render, and let's just call this fun. Okay. Fun JPEG, and that's going to go to the desktop. Yes. Okay, save that out. Alright, we're done with Maya and all the renderings and everything. Okay, folder structure for this particular project, module 3, sci-fi weapon. You're going to create a folder called your first name underscore last name underscore Annie150 underscore module underscore 03. That's your main folder, and you're going to create 3 subfolders. One's called renders, one is called scenes, and one is called screenshots. Alright, pretty simple. Scenes. Okay, so we've got our MB file, our FBX, our OBJ, and the MTL. These two go together. You have to have these two together. Okay. This MTL is materials. It has to go with the OBJ. Without that, the OBJ cannot see any material attributes on that particular model. So let's say you have a blend, like 3 or 4 blends to differentiate between metal and plastic and rubber. That without this, it won't see those. Okay, so not that we have any textures on there. Let's go ahead and select these and pop them, just drag them into the scenes folder. Okay. Now here, these are our screenshots, front and back screenshots of each one, low and high poly. Okay. I want wireframe on. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and select those and drag those into screenshots. Okay. Then we have our renders. Our front perspective of our high poly and back perspective of the high poly. Let's select those and bring those into the renders folder. And then the high poly is just one that's fun. I went with the car paint, just the default. I didn't do anything with it. And I'm just going to drag and drop. That is not going to be graded. You do not have to add this. I'm not going to grade you on it, so don't worry. It's just for fun. And just drag that into the renders folder. Okay. And select them all and move them into the main folder. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click over it and go to properties. I always do this before I send it out. It's 47.8 megabytes. That's practical, and that will work just fine. And what we'll do now is right click over it, go to send to compress zip folder. Okay, it's going to compress that folder and zip it up for me. Okay, and then what you'll do is you'll open up Canvas, find my module 3, and upload this folder on the due date, on or before. I would hopefully before the due date in case you run into any issues. Now here's the problem with doing it on the due date or a couple minutes before the due time. So it's Sunday night, 11:59, and you pop it up there, and it takes a while. Maybe your server went down, or maybe your internet went down. That's a bad place to be. Okay, so don't do that. Don't wait till the last minute to turn it in. I usually tell students to turn stuff in a couple days beforehand. And you know what? If you work on it, right? If you work on it and you rezip it, you have that choice of re-uploading up to that time. Okay, the due date and time. You can re-upload stuff. Okay, so feel free to do that. Just remember that it kicks out, it overwrites the other piece, the other folder. Okay. Alright, so with that said, congratulations, you guys finished. Best of luck, and we'll see you in Module 4.